If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. So the EU got a stay of taxation not afforded China, Russia, Japan, and others when President Trump pulled back on designs to implement his 25% tariff on steel, 10% tariff on foreign aluminum. It did not take effect yesterday for EU countries, giving Europe more time to keep talking with the United States about a trade pact to avoid tariffs. So that's good news, isn't it, Steve Moore? Isn't it, Steve Moore? Let's ask Steve Moore.
Hi, Dan.
Hey, Steve.
Hi, Dan.
Is it good?
Hi, Steve.
Hello.
Good news
Hi,
about
guys.
good news about delaying implementation of tariffs on the EU.
Yeah, it is good news, but I think it's only a 30-day reprieve or something like that.
Right.
So, it's the day of judgment is still coming. Look, I think steel tariffs are a stupid idea. I think they're counterproductive. If only because if you want to save jobs in the Midwest in states like Michigan and Ohio and Pennsylvania and some of those Rust Belt states, you're not going to do it by imposing steel tariffs because for every steel producing job you save, you probably are going to cost 3 or 4 jobs in the manufacturing sector, and so it doesn't make a lot of sense. I think the big story though is that my buddy Larry Kudlow is now, I think, on Air Force One No, he's not on Air Force One, but he is flying to China because there are some big negotiations starting tomorrow on the potentially a new trade pact with Beijing, and that will be monumentally important in terms of how this relationship between China and the United States evolves over the next number of years, if not decades.
Well, what kind of changes are they seeking?
Well, look, first of all, China's going to have to make concessions here. There's just no question about it. In fact, I talked to Larry yesterday before he left, and we were just chatting about it. And look, Larry's a free trader. I'm a free trader. You guys are free traders. But, China is out of control right now. They need to be reined back. They need to, stop stealing and cheating on the trade deals. And they steal everything. It's, they're a total copycat economy. So if China's going to have to pull back on some of these things and be cooperative. And if they aren't, then I think Trump will impose tariffs and other penalties against them. As I told Larry right before he left, I said, look, the best of all worlds is, get Beijing to back down a little bit here. They impose gigantic tariffs and non-tariff trade barriers against U.S. goods and services. They do steal things all the time, and they steal our technologies, our drugs, our vaccines, our computer software, all of this stuff, and they don't pay for it. It's a big problem for the American economy and for our security as well. So, I think the bottom line here, Amy, is that China is going to have to make concessions, and if they don't, I think it's going to get, we don't use the word trade war. We don't use that, but this trade dispute could get hotter.
It's a cultural touchstone when it's parodied in popular sitcoms like Silicon Valley, where the Chinese national that's part of the incubator in Silicon Valley is just new Reddit, new Facebook, new Twitter. Those are his big ideas, just putting new in front of American companies.
Exactly. No, but that's true. That's actually exactly what they do. I mean, the Chinese are incredibly hardworking people. They're incredibly entrepreneurial, but they're not innovators. America, we're the leading innovator country in the world, and so you're exactly right. I haven't seen that episode of Silicon Valley, but that's exactly what they do. And I think I may have told the story a couple of weeks ago on your show, but there are a number of if you go to China, you'll see like American companies' insignia and logos on the front of a factory, and it's not even it has no relationship. They're just stealing the logo and the copyright and the name. It's like you and I could start a McDonald's. We just put a golden arches up and call ourselves McDonald's.
Well, that's why we changed the name of our show. I don't know if we told you, but our show is now the Rush Limbaugh Show.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know if you.
No, it's Rush, the new improved.
The new,
Rush Limbaugh too, right?
Rush Limbaugh.
The new bow is what we're.
Well, and so with respect to Larry Kudlow going over to China, though,
yeah.
So that's consistent with what Kudlow has said from the beginning here, since he came on as Trump's top economic advisor,
yep.
which is that the tariff discussion is part of a long-term growth play. That's his desire.
Well, that's right, and it is. I mean, look, the trade agenda is really important to Trump. He genuinely believes that. Now, look, the one thing I try to get Trump off of, and Larry does too. Trump is very obsessed with the trade deficit, and in my opinion, that's not really an important issue. It really is important is the level of trade. Are we importing and exporting? The more trade, the better, right? I mean, and so we got to get Trump off this idea that the trade deficit is a problem, because do you know when the trade deficit, Dan and Amy, goes down the most? When we're in a recession.
Right.
When the economy goes into recession, the trade deficit goes down, and when the economy is booming, the trade deficit goes up. So we used to half jokingly tell Trump, look, if you want to get the trade deficit down, you don't have to have all these, tariffs and stuff. Just have a good long recession, and the trade deficit will go down. I mean, the correlation between the two is very high. And so when America does well, American consumers have money, they buy things, they go to Walmart and they buy stuff from China and Japan and these other countries. And by the way, Japan is another country that they'll be going to soon. Japan has more, Japan is the most protectionist country in the world. It's almost impossible to get goods and services sold in Japan because the tariffs are so high. So I think Trump does have a point. I know you're cringing when I say this, Dan, but I think Trump does have a point that these other countries are not playing by the rules. And it is, Trump would say, look, it's not free trade. Now, Milton Friedman would probably say, well, we should just get rid of our trade barriers and they can do what they want. And there's something to that. But, if you want, a fair and balanced trade system, they've got to bring their tariffs down. And a lot of these countries have not done that.
Well, that's true. He's pointing to the right problem. He's applying the wrong remedy, though. I'm in the Friedman camp on that. And the other thing that's problematic about it, too, from sort of an economic political perspective is, and we talked about this a little bit earlier in the show on another matter, but Peter Koklanis has a good piece in the Claremont Institute, the Claremont Review of Books. There's a lot of this free trade rhetoric is just another version of identity politics. The same way that the left plays identity politics with race, Trump's sort of playing identity politics with white working class, and identity politics is a dead end.
Well, I mean, I haven't read that article, but I will say this, that, I did travel with Trump to those states like Michigan, Ohio, and Pennsylvania, and these unionized factory workers and blue-collar workers, and they weren't just white, they were black, they were Hispanic. They really do believe that the trade deals aren't working for them, and that the reason that the factory left Erie, Pennsylvania, or Rockford, Illinois, or whatever little small town it might be, is because of trade. And look, they are probably wrong on that because, look, technology is having a much bigger impact on manufacturing than trade does in terms of, we're so much more productive that you have fewer workers producing more things. That's called economic progress. But, look, I would say this. I think Trump, if Trump can pull this off, if he can get these other countries to reduce their trade barriers to the United States, then it's a win-win for everybody, and then the stock market goes through the roof.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, I want to mention one other thing, if I may, which is I'm very, very upset with a certain United States senator who is a Republican. Do you know who I'm talking about?
There's so many to choose from. You're going to have to be more specific.
Well, I'm talking about Marco Rubio. And did you see what he said yesterday?
I was in Naples vacation.
Oh, come on.
Then you
guys,
should have known.
Amy, did you see it?
No,
you guys, okay,
I was watching
so this is all
Trump's
over the
crazy
news.
doctor.
Come on.
I was playing golf.
So Marco Rubio said yesterday that the tax cut is not working,
That's right.
and that all the benefits are going to rich people, and that it's all these companies like Apple are just paying out dividends to the shareholders and they're not reinvesting and so on. It was like, wait a minute, are you reading out of the DNC talking points, Marco? I mean, now remember we had a little spat with Marco right before the tax bill passed because he wanted a bigger child tax credit and we wanted more rate cuts, and I think he's being a little sour grapes here. He hasn't gotten over the fact that Trump beat him in the primaries, but this is bad for the. I think Marco Rubio's star has faded so rapidly.
Yeah.
By the way, he's completely wrong. Companies are investing. I mean, the American economy right now is surging. It is firing on all cylinders. There's 6 million more jobs today than there are people that can fill the jobs. We have 14 states, by the way, that have the lowest unemployment rate ever. And by the way, Dan and Amy, Illinois is not one of them.
Yeah.
But
right.
you go around the country, it is amazing what's going on with this economy, and the tax cuts played a big part. So I wanted to set the record straight there.
No,
All
that's
right, next time we'll talk about the high gas prices. Every time I go to the pump, it's 10 cents more, 15 cents more.
California is organizing a ballot initiative against gas tax, and there's but going back to Florida.
Wait, say that again. I didn't hear that. What are they doing?
Well, California, they got whatever the 42 million signatures they need to get a question on the ballot opposing a gas tax increase there.
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, look, the economy is booming right now. I am a little nervous about these rising energy prices. No question about it. I mean, now we're back to $3.25. It depends on what state you're in. I think California, they pay $4 a gallon for gas because of all their stupid environmental regulations. But, that's a little troublesome because as gas prices rise, it means, other costs rise because, energy is an input and everything. But there's good news in that story. My column this week is about OPEC. OPEC is dead. OPEC is the United States of America, this great country of ours, thanks to the shale oil and gas revolution. By the end of this year, we will be the number one producer of oil and gas in the world, surpassing Saudi Arabia. That's an amazing accomplishment in 10 years.
Yeah, it's true. And if this energy price continue to creep up, I got a solution. And it's consistent with Comrade Bernie. We just celebrated May Day yesterday. That was so great. So everybody's going to get a job at the federal government, and then everybody's going to get a federal government-financed Tesla. And then everything will be good.
And it'll be free.
Exactly. Steve
It'll be free.
Wall Street Journal columnist, Heritage Foundation economist, Steve Moore. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Okay, guys, have a great week. See you, Rush Limbaugh.
And he joined us on
Rush Limbaugh.
He joined us on our new turnkey.pro answer line.